Welcome, greetings. Thank you so much for being here today. We're on the homeschooling legacy. Yes, the first of many series. We're going to be talking to many homeschooling families about their journey and helping those who are interested in homeschooling to make that step. Our first guest on the show is Abena Richardson, who's been homeschooling for 13 years. And today I have the pleasure of experiencing the homeschooling lessons with her three children right here in Exotic Park. Yes, so thank you so much, Abena, for inviting me.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. It's
And
an
also-
honor to be here, especially on the first program.
Yes.
So
Lovely to have you.
Oh, It's lovely to be here. Yeah.
So tell me, from the very beginning, you decided to homeschool, and this was something that I think you didn't anticipate. Tell us about your story in
Okay.
homeschooling.
Homeschooling, our
Yes,
journey.
yes.
Okay. It's a very interesting one because before we had children, we discussed what we wanted to do with them in terms of their education, raising them, what kind of results we wanted. So we've always had a reverse engineering approach to the way we raise our children. So we kind of decide and then we work backwards to try and achieve our goal.
Okay.
And homeschooling wasn't on the cards. It was honestly always about taking them to school simply because that's what we had been through and we thought that's what would work. And I remember a day when we actually met up with some friends and they were considering homeschooling.
Right.
And us being so backward, I remember our reaction was something like, homeschooling, does anybody even do that? Isn't it certain types of people that homeschool?
Yeah.
You always hear about people who want to keep themselves isolated from society that homeschool. So we had this kind of negative idea or perception of what homeschool was, and that was exactly how it sounded. The children were at home and they just schooled.
Right.
So when she explained what they did, their journey, how they had a holistic approach and they wanted their children to have a holistic educational experience, that being a life experience, not just split it up into an academic and a life experience. They thought everything was all encompassing. We thought, oh, we could look into this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, when you said you and Ekal discussed the kind of education that your children wanted to have before you even discovered homeschooling, your idea was that the schools would be able to provide your vision of your children learning in schools.
We always knew the schools wouldn't be able to provide exactly what we wanted. I think as a couple, for us, we had almost like a 5-step plan for our children.
Okay.
Their identity and understanding their cultural value was first and foremost.
Okay.
And then it was character building, understanding their purposes of who they are, why they're in this world, and what they're here to offer society, and also how they're going to impact the world. Academic has always been third on the list. Okay. And then we had a holistic approach of, just learning about the things that really matter, the things like human psychology, financial literacy, how to make a way in life, studying the law from a very early age, things of that nature. And then also giving back into your community. So along the way, we knew school was going to offer a fraction of that. But the majority of that, initially we thought, oh, you know what, school can do a bit, we'll try and do a little bit, and then the rest will kind of sort itself out. But when we met with my friend and she explained that, it's all encompassing and they do all of that, then we thought, oh, let's actually look at this and see how best we can accommodate.
Yeah, because it sounded like you were on the right track in having this vision, for your children, that you were going to have, more time with them,
right?
Educating them in this way.
Yeah.
And then just leaving some of it to the school system.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a natural progression then. Because, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So tell me then, how easy or hard was it to make that transition once you decided to homeschool? And obviously you had your career, both you and Ekal.
Yeah.
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 Were you both working full time at the time?
We were. So I had a business. I had a business for about 10 years when I decided that I was going to start homeschooling. I'm from the hair and beauty background industry.
Yes.
So I'd actually gone quite far in my career and I've always been, or should I say, I had always been I saw myself as a working mum.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't really see myself as, one of the mums who would be at home, nurturing and mothering. I thought I'd be able to balance the two.
Right.
But when my first son arrived, it completely changed my mind of what I thought I would want to do. I was at home from 7 months prenatal until he was about, well, actually, I never went back.
Wow.
Yeah, I never went back. So I started teaching him when he was around 3 months or so. And I used to have these flashcards and I'd always show them to him.
Yeah.
And when he was about 5 months, I realized that he could actually pick up on these words. So he would see, I would show him like clap and he would start doing that. And I'd show him wave and he would start doing that. And when we realized how effective it was, then we thought, you know what, we could do the same in our language. So hubby, developed the same thing in Chi. We had the flashcards and everything. So by the time he was about a year old, he could read multilingually and he could read and speak and understand and listen to the mother tongue as well as English. So when he was about age 2, just before he turned 3, we hadn't decided on what we wanted to do then. As far as I was concerned at that point, I was just having fun and giving him a head start at home.
Yes.
So we went to this school that was highly recommended, and they said, oh, with the children, if they're either whether they're ahead or whether they're slightly behind, we kind of put them all in the same boat, and we just kind of teach them through play. So when we asked them what that looked like, they said, play was just that. It was play. It wasn't reading through play. It wasn't maths through play. It was just playing with the sand or playing with the animals. And we thought, you know what, their foundation, it would be nice if they had a little bit more than that.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, let's see. I'm going to try and stay at home, continue with the teaching, and then I will, from then on, we'll see what happens.
But what was the actual turning point for you for deciding on homeschooling?
I think it was seeing what they would be offering us compared to how much we'd already invested. And seeing that our children are highly misrepresented in any educational setting or system. Their history doesn't look like them. Their leaders don't look like them. Their activists don't look like them. And that continues from a very foundational age. Even the languages they speak are dismissed. And so for us, it just meant our child is being dismissed. And they have to superimpose somebody else's ideals, cultures, just somebody else's history and traditions on who they are. Indirectly, what does that say to our child? What is that child then becoming as an adult? For us, that had to be first and foremost.
Yes.
Like, value yourself and understand who you are, where you're coming from, know your purpose. And if you have that as a foundation, you will thrive everywhere else. And what we noticed is everybody else did that. Everybody else. The Chinese had, Saturday schools. The Portuguese had them. The Greeks had them. We're the only ones who take our children to school Monday to Friday, and we think that's enough to cover them. And then they, they're adults and they have an identity crisis, and they don't fit in here, but they don't fit in their natural culture. And we're just doing them a disservice. Like, they're so compromised from such an early age. The only difference is when they're younger, they can't voice it.
Yeah.
And by the time they're old, it's too late. So it's sowing the right seeds so that, by the time they're older, they can become self-sustainable. So,
that's right. So you're giving them that, opportunity to learn from it, obviously being represented. And at that early stage, so that's when you decided to leave your full-time work. And that was
commit
hard.
Commit to homeschooling.
Obviously in the UK, not having that representation in schools and in their teachers.
Yes.
All right. So tell me then, how easy was it to kind of take on the role, obviously, disciplining your child, and then you've got more children that came after after your first son. How easy was that to teach them as well as discipline them?
I think that part was the easy part, because that's just me being a mum.
Right.
The hardest part was the understanding and the acceptance that I was giving up, because that's how I saw it at the time. I was giving up my career.
Right.
And at the very beginning, I didn't see it as an investment as I do now. I saw it more as a sacrifice. So I cried. I cried for a couple of days because my career I'd known for the last 20 years or so. And I was walking away from that into an unknown territory.
Right.
And I just didn't know how it would work. But I just had this faith that as a mother, this was my calling at this time. So that kind of filled me with a sense of longing to want to do and fulfill what it is, that the passions that I had to ensure that I was involved in the children's, raising them, upbringing, everything else. So once we got past that, then it was fine. Everything just felt. If there was a time to study, we studied. If there was a time to nurture, I nurtured. If there was a time to discipline, I disciplined. I can't say it was a walk in the park, because you have some really good days, like everything else. When you go to work, you can have some really productive days, and other days, it may not go in according to how you would expect it would go. But then there's always light that shines in the morning, and there's a new day. So you learn a lot about yourself as well as you do with the children, because the children also teach you a lot about yourself as well. So every day is a school day, as they say, and it's just been a really holistic journey.
I can imagine that. It's definitely something that's an extension of parenting. Just, having your children being nurtured, learning in, the ways that you feel that is necessary for them, because you're the one, raising them. So you need for them to be all rounded. In the learning. Which again, the school, when they don't cover your intellect, emotional, spiritual, all these parts that is left out.
That multidimensional beings need, on a daily basis.
So then tell me then how, I know you said it took a while, obviously to accept, your career path. It's changed quite drastically, unknown territory. Did you feel that you needed to look to other teachers to come and, help you with the education, in the areas that you're not familiar with or not so comfortable with? But obviously, when you have children, when the children are this young, you're homeschooling from what age? 3
onwards, 2. Or actually, from he was about 3 months. So it was a continuation.
So from 3 months, then did you get into, how soon did you get into specific studies or subjects?
Okay, so probably from the age of about 2, I had a timetable for ASIDA. And I should, I've got a picture of it somewhere. I think I can find it for you. But so we would do, I remember we had English, maths on there, we had Chi, and we had French and outdoor activities. So I started him out with outdoor activities from an early age as well. So we would do off the cuff ones where we would go to the farm or we would go to the park. And then we had structured ones where we would actually attend what looked like a class. And we used to have this specific music class, which was an introduction to music before he started playing instruments. So I would have all that timetable written down.
So there's like a project-based learning, like sitting down and
studying.
Music. So you taught him that, the music class?
No, the music class, we used to go to a class.
Okay, all right.
And and I used to make friends with every single one of either the facilitators or the teachers at these classes. So they became like extended friends of the family, which was really nice. But it taught him a lot, and it was both my daughter and my son that used to go to these classes. So they were really good foundations. And then post that, when it became a bit more structured, we looked at things like Kumon. I don't know if you've heard of Kumon.
No. What's Kumon?
I think it's from Japan. So it's a maths and English program that's progressive. So they take you from the lower levels, with maths, it's counting, then adding, subtracting, division, all of that, all the way up until A levels. and they do the same with English.
All right.
Yeah, so that was really helpful as an introduction to
Yes.
maths and English.
And is that an online program?
No, I think you do them. They do them at centres, and then they give you the books.
All
And then
right.
you do the books during the week, and then you will go back. So you will keep going, and they'll keep testing the child and keep moving them up a level.
Okay.
So I found those really helpful, and I think there are some in Ghana for those who are looking as well. Yeah.
All right. Nice.
So yeah.
Okay.
So come on, and then they've developed. I took them to French classes, so that's when their French started to become a lot more structured. We started off with those classes learning the colours, days of the week, months of the year, food that they liked, people, family, and then it became structured sentences. So once they could read and write, then we moved on to different teachers.
Okay.
So yeah, for lessons that we weren't so knowledgeable about, then we just enlisted the teachers to come in and help us out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there any of the actual lessons that you do now that you create the curriculum yourself?
Yeah, there are. So we do an array of subjects, but alongside that, I like to just formulate the curriculum so that there's a deeper understanding of it. So an example, like today, my son and I are just starting on, my youngest, we're starting on synonyms.
Okay.
And in his book, it says these are words that sound similar to other words.
Yeah.
So then I'd have to create in his book what synonyms are, so the definition of synonyms, what they give him a few examples, and then we just use those to write sentences. So it just reinforces, and he understands that there is an actual word for words that sound the same, as opposed to just words that sound similar.
Right.
Or that words that mean the same.
That's right.
Okay.
So and then based on, say, the beginning stages where you're looking into assessing their learning and stuff like that, did you have any guidelines as to how you'd meet certain benchmarks, or know that this is something that do you follow benchmarks, or do you just like completely
do a free for all? Okay, so going back to your previous question, we do also do a personal curriculum for African studies.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was really important to us. So that comprises of, and this is actually something that we teach an array of children. So we've had about 500 children in and out of our doors. Yeah.
Yes. So wait, the African Studies curriculum is something that you've shared with the community.
Yeah.
And that's something like was it a Saturday class?
Yeah, so that was like a Saturday school.
Okay.
Yeah,
Saturday
school. Yeah. So the aim for that was to ensure that the children, again, we always use reverse engineering. So we wanted a generation for them where they would be interdependent, where they would be depending on one another for services. So rather than look outside of their community for a plumber, an electrician, or whatever, they would look to each other. But if we didn't start that young, that trust wouldn't be there, and we would just be continuing that generational cycle of always spending outside of your community.
Yeah.
So we teach them everything from language to heritage, traditions, natural resources, various countries, what the resources do, how to manage them, etc. Just so that they can become that sustainable generation that look after us, knowing exactly what they're doing and having trust in each other. So that was one. And then back to your question that you just asked in terms of, do we do benchmarks?
Yes.
We have always, initially, we'd go alongside their pace.
Yeah.
So we would choose certain curriculums in different subjects. And we don't do one curriculum that covers all subjects. We choose different curriculums for the subject that we feel suits our child.
Right.
Yeah. So they would study that, and then once they become knowledgeable enough and the teacher feels like they're ready and they want to do it, then they can go for an exam. So as it stands, they're now preparing for their French, business and biology exams. But it's at that point I don't decide. It's the teacher that says, I think
Okay.
we should put them forward, and if they say they want to try it, then yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So that sounds like you have enough teachers that covers these subjects. Is it quite balanced then? Would you say that the amount of hands-on other
Help.
teachers coming in, and you're teaching?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have time away from teaching.
I do, but you're still quite involved because the teacher then will relay how they're doing, what level, what they need to do to improve, etc., etc. So you work alongside them. But yeah,
there's more working alongside.
Yeah. So it's not as intense as it used to be. Like like you're saying, it's not like the early days where it was all hands on all the time.
Yeah.
As time goes on, you find that you can't, unless you're fully mastered in that subject. You get to a point where you just need to enlist the help, and also it's just nice to have the break as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because really that leads me on to the next question, which is when you start to homeschool, it becomes a self-sacrifice to, for your own well-being and those things. So how do you balance your, yourself and your time for well-being and looking after yourself?
Definitely, it's a really good question actually. I think perception is everything. Before you get yourself into anything, you have to really consider your outlook on what you're doing. I speak to women that are at work, and I think their gripe is always that they can't find enough time to be with their children.
Yeah.
There's that mum guilt. But what's actually interesting is there's that mum guilt across the board. It's not respective of whether you work or whether you don't work. For me personally, it was perception and finding the balance. So once I saw it as an investment, not as a sacrifice, my whole outlook on everything changed. And I had to make a promise to myself to always take and appreciate every day as it comes, because I won't get it back. And even now, I look at the children and I can remember when they were with me. Like I can remember holding my youngest son's hand to every class that we had, and we'd be jumping in the mud and we'd be doing all of this. And then one day I woke up and he was like taller than me. And my daughter said to me the other day, "Oh my goodness, in 5 years' time he's going to be 18." And it really dawned on me. I was like, is this time just really just come and gone just like that? Yeah.
Even when you're with them every day, you're not missing out, but you're still feeling like, wow.
No, definitely. First time I realized that I was going too far in one direction, when I did realize that it was too late, and that was my first lesson in finding balance. So what I used to do is I'd wake up. For me, the lesson planning was always like a term in advance. So it wasn't like, I'd have to wake up and think about what I was doing. That was one saving grace. But then I used to wake up and I'd do the same thing over and over and over. And there was no self-care for me. There was no well-being or going out with, catching up and all of that. So I think one day I sat down to think about what I was doing, and I felt like I was burning out. I just felt like this is a bit too much, and I was overwhelmed by everything. And so I took time out. I remember taking a whole weekend off, didn't do anything. I went away actually for about 3 days, and then came back, and Echo was like, "No, we're going to have to change the routine. We're going to have to change the way you do things." And so now every month I have a catch up with friends. I go out, I get my hair done, massage, all of that, just to sort of keep that balance. And it also it's a good example for the children, because they understand that you can't keep doing something for so long. There's got to be necessary breaks where you take the time for yourself just to rejuvenate and all of that.
Because really, even though it's parenting, it's your work, and it's I think everyone is the same. Whatever we do within our passion and our our lifestyle, we have to have things that's going to help to reset
the button
and just do nothing and be okay with days of not doing anything, and the children need that too. So I think this thing of homeschooling again, how much time is spent on them learning, in the say sit down, study, or soaking up all this knowledge and making sure that they have a balanced, outdoor curriculum. I think that's one of the things that's my main concern. Balancing lifestyle, um, your needs, obviously being able to step away,
Yeah.
to refuel. Um, so at what point did you realize then that, this is an important part of homeschooling to maintain,
The bat.
your,
I think it was probably 2017. So at that point, I'd been homeschooling for about 6 years,
okay,
and it intensified over time.
yeah,
So with my first one, it was quite relaxed. It
Yeah.
was and then
Okay.
the second one came, and then I kind of integrated her into what we were doing.
yeah,
But there's pregnancy in between that, and
Yes.
life changes in between that. When the third one came, sometimes you'd be preparing the first one for some exam or whatever, and then making sure that the second one is being seen to and not left out, and then the third one is just also coming up. So it's always, for a while, it was finding your balance again. And when you're finding your feet in that space and time, that's when the burnout can come in, because you want to cover all ground.
Yeah.
When actually, like you're saying, you need to sit back, assess exactly what's going on, see what's needed, and see how you're going to incorporate that into your daily routine.
But it sounds like they're getting exams at a young age. In primary, we normally get exams.
Yeah, you see, this is,
So this sounds very more intense with the exams. Is that something that you value for the children in their age?
It's so interesting, because when you've been schooled,
Yes.
you realize how much you've been programmed by the school system. And that was one of the first things I had to take out of my mind when I started homeschooling. Actually, it was a call that said, you do realize you're free
From exams.
Not even from exams, from the system.
Right.
And so you're not bound to a 9 to 5. You're not bound to sitting at a table and studying. You can go out and do it as and when you want. And the human brain is, especially from age 0 to 5, absorbs so much in such a short space of time. They don't stretch out your day from 8 till 3 or 9 till 3 like school day. Child, if it's a subject they're really interested in, they can excel in such a short space of time. And they don't even see it as an exam. They just, they'll take it, and you can, once you realize they have a gift in something and they want to excel in that area. So I remember before that, I would hear of, like 12-year-olds going to university and things like that. And I think to myself, how did they do that? Like, that means they had no time to be themselves, or they lost their childhood. But then once you're out of the system, you realize that they were confined to doing things at a certain time, within a certain time frame, for years and years and years. And that's the way that it's been designed. But then when you're at home and you're teaching your children, you make up, it's your system, and the child, that is what makes every child so unique as well. So given that they have their own purpose, and given that they can excel, like my daughter bakes exceptional cakes. And they're cakes that you would expect, maybe like she's gone to culinary, or she's gone to, but it's just what, because she has the time to experiment and to, So with studies, normally we're done by about midday, everything is done. And they can go and explore, they can do their personal research, and oftentimes even my oldest would come out with all these facts that I know absolutely nothing about, but you've got the freedom to
So so when it comes to like specializing in something that you've seen that their passion for, is it something that you separate from, let's say, the academic subjects, and then you do how do you structure your homeschooling? Is that they integrate that learning, something that they're passionate about, within the science, maths, English, study time?
Do you know, it's interesting. I remember when I was at school, I always used to think subjects were isolated. So your sciences was separate to your business, and your business was separate to your art. And but when you become a homeschool parent, it's amazing how much you realize all of it is actually connected.
Yes.
So you can use a bit of their art and explain the dynamics of what they're drawing when they're doing their maths and vice versa. Or talking about the body. Like yesterday, my 5-year-old and I did the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking about the, when we got to the cerebrum, we were talking about how the right side controls the left side of your body, and the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body. And he was just so intrigued by that. And so I'm thinking, okay, we're just going to cover the brain. But then he's talking about, oh, mummy, but this is your right and that's your left. So this is what's controlling this. And if I do that, then my right side's control. And so we've just been doing that like the whole week. But then you realize that all the subjects are actually, they're connected. So
it's good when you can
integrate
that.
Yeah.
Because this is really what, learning should be about. It should be, it's infused with each other.
Yeah.
And so you could be on one subject and cover it in history, in science, experiments, make it into art and integrate everything. So that they get the full understanding before you move on to the next thing. Is that a style that you teach your children, or is it do they have different ways of learning?
Yeah, they've all got different styles. So I think homeschooling is that's another advantage for homeschooling. Like even before you teach a child, you want to really understand their learning style. Like, are they visual? Are they audio? Are they verbal? And then once you've identified that, then you can move forward with, what it is that you want them to master. And I'm all for mastery. We can stay on the same thing for as long as possible. It just doesn't bother me. Like, I want to make sure that, you understand because otherwise there's no point in moving along. It's like, taking one step and taking the next step. There's no point in, if you can't master that this step, foot goes here, you're going to fall over. So it's just best that you just solidify that foundation before.
Tell me then, what would you say to, those who are looking to homeschool? What would be your advice to them, knowing that you've, left your full-time job in a similar situation to yourself? What would you say to them?
I would say, if homeschooling is something that's on your heart, follow your heart. Nothing can replace your children at the end of the day. And when all is said and done, they're what we're going to have to show for what we came to do. They're our biggest investment. Everything else is pretty much a liability. And so if that's your dream, then just pursue it. Start to really look into certain groups that are homeschooling in your area. Look at your strengths and look at your challenges, and facilitate the help by which you'll be able to receive adequate help. I have to say, parenting children full time is probably the hardest thing that I've done, but the rewards is also the most fulfilling thing that I've done. And I think when you have something so valuable, nothing worth having will ever come easy. But when you look back and you see what you've achieved in such a short space of time, and before you know it, the children are grown. So it's not a sacrifice, it is an investment. And I would say, I would highly recommend 110% just go for it.
Oh, thank you so much, Abena.
You're more than welcome
today, and it's been very inspiring, and to hear, all the ins and outs, the insights. Definitely, please, ladies, gentlemen, families, do tune in each and every time.
Good job, guys. Subscribe, follow, share with all your friends. This lady is absolutely fantastic. She's here for the next generation, and make sure you're here to support.
Empowering families, educating the community. Stay tuned for more episodes. See you next time.
See you guys. Bye.